everybody, it's Nina. Thanks so much for joining me today for a brand new Studio Monday video. For those of you that have never created with animation stamps, or even for those of you that have, I'm going to be sharing a very quick and easy animation card with you that uses very few supplies. This card is so simple that even kids can create it, so I think everybody will really enjoy this. So what you're looking at here is the Loving Cat stamp set from Uchi's Designs. And Uchi's Designs creates animation stamps, which are basically stamps made up of a series of lines. You're seeing me stamp the animation stamp, the heart that says, I love you. And I'm making this up in some black ink from Simon Says Stamp. I'm making this up in my Misty because I want to make sure that I get a really dark impression. You don't have to, but I find the results are better if you stamp over the black ink multiple times to get as dark of an impression as you can. So I'm going to stamp over this multiple times, and the Misty stamping tool helps me to get that perfect placement over top of this image, so that way I make sure that the image is lined up every time I stamp it down. So now that I've stamped the image onto my pink cardstock, I'm going to overlay a piece of the animation grid so you can kind of get an idea of how it looks as you move the animation grid across the image. You see that the image becomes a heart, and then the heart turns really small and says, I love you. I think it's really, really cute. So I'm starting off by building the front panel of my card, and this panel is 4 inches square. I'm going to die cut a circle into this panel using a Simon Says Stamp circle die. I'm going to line this up right in the center and run this through my Big Shot machine so I create a window. This window is going to allow me to see that image on the inside of the card, and I'll be able to have the animation grid sliding back and forth behind that window over top of the heart. I need to trim this panel down so that it's a little bit smaller than the panel itself that's going over top, but I don't want it to be too small because again we have that circle die cut into that dark pink panel, and we want to be able to make sure that we don't see any of the edges of the lighter pink underneath. I'm taking a piece of the animation grid now, and I'm going to trim this down to be just a little bit smaller than that pink panel again. As I'm cutting this, I'm making sure to cut very straight and evenly because we want to make sure that this panel is straight. As you're sliding this back and forth, it needs to be straight so that way it's lining up with the image, the little stamped image underneath. And so that way the lines of the grid paper will line up perfectly with the stamped image and will give you the best animation. You can see I have a little bit of space on the edges. This is going to allow me to take some very small paper strips and line these up along 3 edges of that panel. What this is doing is this is creating a guide for my little grid paper to slide back and forth in. It's basically creating a slider card. So I'm going to line up these little strips of paper. These are between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch in width. As I'm adhering these down, I'm going to create a layer of 2 of each of these strips on top of each other. So each side has 2 strips layered on top. Once I've adhered all the strips down onto the paper, I'm going to begin stamping some of the heart images from that stamp set onto the background. Now you don't have to do this, but I think it really dresses up the card, and it also shows off the animation stamps really nicely. I think it looks so cool and really highlights the animation stamps on the inside of that window. And they look really cool. It almost has a very modern graphic feel to it. I really like the way that those hearts look with this card. I'm going to use that same circle die and cut a piece of paper. I'm going to cut a half circle, and I'm going to use this as the pull tab for my slider. I'm also using an extra strip of that dark pink cardstock, and I'm going to add this to the edge of that animation grid. You don't have to do this, but I just wanted to dress up the animation grid a little bit. You could totally just add that little half circle right onto the edge of the animation grid and leave it like that. The only thing you want to make sure is that you don't adhere that half circle too far down on the animation grid, or you will see it behind that circle window. Now because this is an animated card, very interactive, I'm going to pull out the Push Here stamp set from Fawn, which is filled with so many cute sentiments that are perfect for interactive cards. So there's things like shake here, pull here, open here, and really fun things that add some interest to your cards but also give directions to the recipient so that they know what to do with the card when they get it. I'm going to show you here how the animation grid will slide back and forth now in those tracks. You can see as I move this back and forth and pull on the pull tab, I'm able to pull that little grid paper across the heart panel, and it's making that stamp animated. Now I need to adhere all of this onto a card. I've cut a card down to be 4¼ square, and I'm using my window piece to help me line up all of these pieces onto my card. I want to make sure everything's evenly spaced, and I also want to make sure that this heart is lined up right in the center. So by overlaying my window piece over top of my background as I'm adhering this down, that's helping me give a guide for the edges of my paper. Now I need to go ahead and add the animation grid onto my window piece and adhere this down over top of the heart. Again, keep in mind that when you're adhering this down, you need to make sure that the lines of the animation grid are lined up evenly with the animation stamp underneath. So as I'm lining this up, I'm kind of trying to make sure that I line this up onto the stamp underneath before I press it down all the way. Once I'm happy with it, I can push it down and know that it's in the right place. Isn't that animation so cool? It adds such a fun interest to a card. And like I said, this was so easy to create. Animated cards don't have to be difficult to make. You can make them as elaborate as you like, but you can also make them very simple and easy to build. So I hope that this video has given you some inspiration for using the Uchi's Designs animation stamps. They have a ton of different designs that you can choose from and really fun things to be able to create cards with. If you're interested in learning more about this card, you can head on over to the blog. The link is in the video description. And thank you so much for stopping by and watching this video. If you enjoyed, here are 2 more you might like featuring some fun animated cards. Thanks again for stopping by, and I will see you again soon. Bye!